I mean, I'm telling you, if you'd asked me when that was, I would have said, oh, it was a few months ago. And it's like, good Lord, that's 5 years ago. Anyway, those of you that are just logging in, go have a cup of something because we're already way out there. if, if your comfort zone is easily challenged, this may not be the day for you. You might need to go watch Ernest Angley or somebody, but Charles Stanley. We are not that this morning. We have left the shore and we show no signs of moving back toward it. We're on a cruise. Please remain standing and let's play this for the YouTubians from the planet Utubia.
Hello, and welcome to Metron. Metron means measure and sphere of influence, and we want to help you find your Metron. Through motivation, enlightenment, transcendence, renewal, outreach, and networking. We're excited to have you here today and hope you enjoy the service.
Good morning, beautiful people. Glad that you're here. Give yourselves a big hand for making it. And I love the streamers. Streamers are awesome, but there's nothing like actually being here, breathing the same air with you. And I love you all and appreciate that you make the journey here. Many of you have been doing it for a while now, and I never take it for granted. Truly appreciate it. Greet someone if somebody you haven't spoken to in a minute. Say hey to them, and then you may be seated. Oh, wait, no, don't sit down yet. I want to lead you in this confession. I forgot. Remain standing, remain standing, remain standing. I like to open up. No, stand back up, stand back up. I like to, let's start with this Lord's Prayer. I like this. Let's say it together. Our Father, who art in heaven, presence of divine love and light that lives within us and within all of life. Hallowed be thy name. We invoke the powerful creative nature of all that is sacred and holy. Thy kingdom come. We embrace the healing essence that is the kingdom of heaven within us. Thy will be done. We accept our greatest good as we align with our divine nature. I love that one. On earth as it is in heaven, knowing that the affairs of our lives reflect our evolving consciousness. Give us this day our daily bread. Each day we receive great blessings from within and throughout all the activities of our lives. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We accept the divine nature of all things and all people, including ourselves, as we move away from judgment and toward greater awareness of divine presence. And lead us not into temptation. We shall be vigilant in expressing and experiencing the oneness with all life. But deliver us from evil as we are learning to live without fault-finding and suffering. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. For we accept the consciousness of divine perfection with all its power and glory right here, right now, and forever. Amen. And so it is. So be it. Amen. 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 I love that. If you don't know what that is, that's a metaphysical interpretation of the Lord's Prayer, and I love the Lord's Prayer. There is something about saying those words, even as much as I don't use the King James, there's something about using those familiar words from the Elizabethan that it really creates something, an energy that I love. It doesn't feel religious. It feels very kingdom and open. So, yeah. All right. Now you've greeted one another. You may be seated. Beautiful people. I think a lot of people think we're already in Jekyll Island, but that is not. That is next Sunday. Some of you have already driven on down. Done been there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be beautiful. We've got Michelle found this really cool video that we're going to use of Driftwood Beach that we're going to use incorporate into the meditation today. It's going to be really good. But 2 or 3 things. Y'all, am I going to have to separate y'all too? Wellington, keep an eye on these two on the front. So our outreach this month is Prevent Child Abuse America, and you do a little research on that organization. It's sort of an umbrella organization that does a lot to help prevent human trafficking and all kinds of things. I need to tell you a little bit more about it. Maybe I should have done a little bit more homework, but it's a very well-vetted charity, so that's what we're giving to this month. And I'll say more about it in a minute, but remember, we will not be here next Sunday morning. We will be in Jekyll Island. Those of you that are watching, there's all kind of people that every time we do one of these, says, I want to go to the next one. Well, you've still got time, and all you have to do is find your place, your space. And sometimes I'm always want to get a room earlier, but sometimes there's an advantage to waiting later. Sometimes they haven't sold out all their rooms and things are reduced price. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but really comes down to just making a decision. If you want to do something, the power of the decision attracts the time and the money and the whatever you need to get it done. So we'll be having a Saturday night meditation on Driftwood Beach in Jekyll Island. And I'll say more about this as we get to it, but it's a little bit of an effort to get to Driftwood Beach. So I just want to prepare you for that. If your hotel has a shuttle, you might want to look into that. I mean, it's not. I don't want to scare you off from it, but it's not like the big public beach. It's a little more remote, which makes it cool. And then we'll be doing the Sunday morning back where we were, actually where we did our first one. So I'm excited about you being there, and if you can see the thread, it means you're on the thread. So that's the dealio with that. Our living your best life. There's a lot of stuff. Charles and Aaron post a lot of things with their kids, and their kids are like these super achievers. That like they're running 10K. They must wear you out, Charles. They're running 10Ks. They're joining the police force. So they're really cool kids. There's BJ working out. Ernie posted that y'all must have been out on the deck. There was no humidity, and that was the cat laying there enjoying it. It was really nice. I mean, with all it was apparently 84 degrees at the North Pole for the first time in history, but it was cooler here for some reason. So anyway, that was my blueberries. They looked better than they actually were. You know how at Publix, when you're checking out, they kind of have the overstocked fruit there, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I understand why they were overstocked, but they made a nice picture. But blueberries are really good antioxidants. And then that was Ernie posting for his definition of living your best life is going to Atlanta United game, especially when they win 3-0. So that's cool. It was a good participation in that this week. Let's see, is that everything? Marshall Ruffin will be with us. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. I have so many, thank you. I have so many anniversaries, I even can't keep up with them. My ministry anniversary is in February, but 21 years ago I was consecrated to the office of bishop. And I remember the argument we had about it last week because Avery is a scribe and a documentarian, so she was wishing me happy 20th anniversary. I said, no, that was like in October. She says, no, it was July. I said, Avery, I think I would know when I was consecrated as a bishop. Well, so she found the documentation. It was like, oh, I guess it was July. My bad. So anyway, apparently it was my 21st. Oh, that's it. I know. So I know it's confusing, but I do want you to keep up with them all, and I want gifts for every one of them. So, and yes, I am still a bishop. It was when I told you when I walked in to do Sammy's service, the funeral director said, "What do I call you now?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I don't know what to call you." I said, "Well, you can call me anything." But he said, "Does anybody ever call you bishop?" I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't defrocked. I am still. You don't." So anyway, all right, take his big head off of there. That's enough of him. But thank you for remembering. And actually, I'm there's enough distance now. That's a good thing for me now. I don't. I've maintained relationships. It's funny. I won't say their names because you would know them, but there are still people that, for the sake of their ministry, don't call me their bishop, but they call me for everything. One of them called me the other night because his board's wanting him to step down and retire, and he wanted to know what I thought he should do about it. And I wanted to go, am I still your? I'm still your cover? Like, I guess there's all kind of people that think. So anyway, but thank you for remembering that, Avery. And I think that is everything. Marshall will be with us when we get back from Jekyll. He'll be here whatever those next 2 Sundays are. And then we will begin the next half of the decade that we've been here, hard as it is to believe. Anyway, are you all ready for the word? All right, that was weak. Yeah, whatever. What is that, Charles? That's the starting thing. Is that when I get the starting blocks? All right, I'm ready. Welcome to Metron Live, coming to you from Metron in beautiful, historic Midtown Atlanta. Metron people, give the podcast people a big hand. We welcome you. And if you're looking for the podcast, we had some snafu with the security certificate, which we're renewing that. You could still get on. It's just it requires a little bit more effort to find it, but we are still podcasting. We are still alive and well, and that will be remedied the next few days. I have thoroughly enjoyed this teaching, and I have a general rule of thumb with these series that for some reason the last installment seems to always be the best one. I don't know why. I guess it's good to the last drop, and I feel like I have something important to say. I'm going to show you this verse of scripture. First of all, the title is Meditation in the Mind of Christ, Healing the Subconscious and Living as Spirits in the Material World. Let me show you this verse of scripture, and then I want to go back and give you some backstory. This is Mark chapter 4, verse 3 in the Amplified Classic. It says, "And he said to them, 'Do you not discern and understand this parable? How then is it possible for you to discern and understand all the parables?'" Now, let me explain to you what this is and why this is important to what we're talking about today, why it's germane to it. I think you'll be able to relate to this, but I was questioning within myself earlier this week, why is it that some things that people write and say and post about God irritates me? I don't know why it irritates me so much, because I really do believe in the concept of namaste, and that which is sacred in you honors that which is sacred in me. And nothing ever irritates me to the point that I'm going to challenge you on it. I am not interested in arguing with anybody. But I was trying to go within myself, specifically when it's something about God's got a plan, God's going to do it, God's working it out, God's got you, God's pulling you through, God's going to make it happen, whatever. And so I was really asking myself, why does this bother me so much? Because I know I love God. I'm not an atheist. I'm not trying to diminish people's trust in God, but why does this aggravate me, especially when people are believing for something and they're like, we don't know what God's doing, but we're just like, God, just have your way, whatever. And I want to go, I think you need to rethink that, because you're living this idea that something's just going to work out. And I get the whole needing a higher power. I understand David saying, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. As I always say when I talk along these lines, I never want to fully disconnect from my Jesus take the wheel clause. So but I was really asking myself, like, if I become a humanist or an atheist, like, why does that? Because it's like scratching on a blackboard. Like, why does that bother me? Because I know I love God. I know I love the Bible. I mean, I feel like I deconstruct it a lot, but I wouldn't even pay it any attention if I didn't love it. So I was asking myself, why does that bother me? And I, just clear as a bell, heard the voice in me say, it's the parable that unlocks all the other parables. Now, to explain to you what he's talking about. In the 4th chapter of Mark, Jesus, most of his parables were about agriculture because he was talking to an agricultural society, like the way I will get a truth across with movie or TV reference, because that's the world we live in. Those people were literally planting seeds, and I know some of y'all are gardeners, whatever, but for the most part, most people in an urban community live away from planting and harvesting or whatever. So it's not, even though we understand the concept of it, you understand what I'm saying. So Jesus talked a lot about sowing and reaping, planting and harvesting, and all that kind of stuff. And one day he says, he starts the story and he says, well, the sower sows the word. And he says, the word is like a man who goes out and sows seed. And he gives 4 different scenarios. He said, to some, the seed fell by the wayside and the birds came and ate it up immediately. And he said, then there were others that were sown among rocky ground that didn't have a lot of depth in it. So the shoots sprang up quickly, but then they died away quickly because they had no root in them. And then he talked about a third scenario where he says, and some were sown among thorns and that sort of thing. And he uses as a metaphor. He says the word was choked out because of, what does he say, the deceitfulness of riches, the cares of this life. He mentions 3 things. So he's showing 3 different things. And he said, and then there was a 4th group that they were planted on good soil, and some produced 30, some produced 60, some produced 100. So the disciples, who, were just clueless a good bit of the time, didn't want to ask a thing publicly because Jesus would, he would bust their chops. He would just come back and say something really embarrassing to them. But they came to him privately and said, why is this so important? Why are you giving a lecture on soil samples? This isn't, what's the big agricultural college? ABAC. This isn't ABAC. These people aren't agricultural majors. And Jesus says to him something, the only time he ever says it, he says, if you don't understand this parable, you won't understand any of them. So I thought, well, what's that got to do with why all the God stuff bothers me? And then I realized, well, in this parable, the seed is nearly the afterthought. He doesn't talk about, he doesn't say the seed is great, the seed is mighty, the seed will fix it for you, the seed will change things, the seed's got a plan, the seed's working all things together, the seed's got you, the seed's going to pull you through. The only time he just, the sower sows the word and he plants the seed. But he goes into this great detail about the soil. Now, if the parable is about the seed, the power of the seed, then for him to say some produce 30, some produce 60, some produce 100 would imply that God is arbitrary. That God just picks out some people and if he likes you a lot, you get 100-fold return on your harvest, but if not, and that can't be right. So he doesn't diminish the seed, but the seed is nearly a given. In other words, he says the seed's out there, there's enough seed to go around. Ken's on call this week, so I went out and stayed with him Friday night. He works in paradise, where it's just beautiful, and that place is, it's booming. They're building so many. He took me to this one new area. I haven't seen houses this big in Beverly Hills. It's like he works in Georgia's Riviera, and it's like all right there on the lake and everything. I said, my God, you just work in this most beautiful, and so he. Of course, all these people now they have things for him to do after work. So he leaves 6 in the morning and doesn't get home till 8 at night. And every time I meet these wealthy people, they're like, Ken's like, he's our family member. I want to go. No, he has a family who's waiting for him in Atlanta to eat dinner. But anyway, I digress. But so I was looking, it's just beautifully landscaped. Is it like 6,000 acres? It's huge. It's a golf community. It used to be called Reynolds Plantation, but the word plantation has a lot of baggage to it, so now it's called Reynolds Lake Oconee, and he's been there 15 years, I think, and it's worth it for him to drive from Atlanta every day there because it's such a great job. But then we're driving to his family reunion yesterday, and we passed this one place, just acres and acres and acres and acres of baby trees growing up. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's a new nursery." Nurseries is a big deal out there because all of these mansions are very well landscaped. And he said, "This guy just started this new nursery, and he can't keep up with the demand." And, you could see trees at this level, trees at this level, and if you've ever bought plants, they're expensive. I remember when I had my house in Covington, a guy came out, was looking around. He was telling me I didn't pay for this stuff. This was stuff that came with the house. But he said, "Yeah, that's probably about a $10,000 Jap maple." I said, $10,000? Yikes! I was telling the kids, don't play around that thing. I had no idea. But it's expensive stuff. But I was looking. I thought, well, what an interesting job. It's not something I would be interested in. But I thought, what an interesting job to have, that you could just plant this stuff and then sell it. And if you liked planting, that would be a great job, So anyway, I was thinking about that and the whole thing about the sower sows the word and whatever. And I thought, well, the whole emphasis is on the person. Now, what I'm talking about this month is meditating to heal the subconscious. And I just think this is very connected to what Jesus was talking about. Because if you obsess over the seed and ignore the soil, I don't care how good the seed is. Jesus said, you will know the truth will make you free. The truth doesn't make you free. It's the truth that you know that makes you free. They could prescribe you the best medicine in the world. If you go put it on your nightstand and say, there it is, it cures everything. Not if you don't take it. And not if you don't take it according to instructions. And there's certain criteria. There's certain pills you're not supposed to take with grapefruit juice because it counteracts certain things or whatever. So even if it's the best that money can buy, you still have to have, there's a condition of the soil for the seed that is important. And I think that's the fundamental problem with people that don't think you give enough credit to God. Because there's, I don't know if y'all got friends with this, but I've always got somebody that wants to Christianize you a little bit. Like if I say, like I posted something not long ago, it was like, you're destined to become the person you decide to be, which is a great quote. And there's inevitably somebody on there that says, you're destined to become the person that God says you are. And I'm like, okay, I understand what you're saying, angry Christian. And I'm going to let you say, I'm going to like on it, and then I'm going to delete you because you're stinking up my page with your weird, funky religious mojo. Like God's big, God's doing just fine without you having to, be his attorney. God's God. So relax. But it occurred to me, this is why I'm so interested in you getting yourself right, getting your heart right, getting your mind right, getting your subconscious right. Because I don't care how great God is, if the seed is the seed, but if the soil isn't right, it could be the best seed. It could be flown in from the finest whatever. It's not going to produce. That's why, if you're going to plant a garden, whatever, especially if you're putting a lot of money into it, you have to come and have somebody check out the soil and make sure, is it too acidic? Is it too this? Is it too that? Because there's some things that don't grow well in other environments. If you grew up in Georgia, you're used to kudzu. Kudzu's not indigenous. Kudzu is Japanese. There was somebody that brought it from Japan years ago, and it just thrived in this. It thrived here more than it did in Japan. So there's some environments that are too good for some. You know what I mean? It's like, anyway. So this to me was a confirmation that whatever you can do, meditate, change the way you think, change the way you speak, whatever. If you're just, let me say it this way. I think there are some people that don't realize how lazy they are being they think they're giving all the glory to God. It's not me, it's God. It's not me, it's God. And it sounds good, it sounds humble, it sounds religious, but it's actually kind of lazy. Because God's God, but it's a whole lot you. And, that's the whole impetus of my ministry. And I was even thinking about this because I understand worship. I am not anti-worship. Clearly, there are people that thrive on that and whatever, and I'm not diminishing that in any way. But if I thought that God only created us for us to worship Him, something about that seems really narcissistic to me. I was thinking about it this way. We have a tradition on our birthdays, me and my kids, whatever. We go around the table and everybody says something positive, and I look forward to it. I love when my kids tell me whatever. I love it. It's like I look forward to it a month in advance, and because they're very verbal and they say these amazing things, and it's always very moving. And we even do it for Sophia and Olivia, and it's wonderful to that a child can hear affirmation like that. If, however, my kids wanted to come over to my loft and do it every night, at a certain point I'd be like, I get it. Y'all love me. I'm a good dad. Less is more. I would rather y'all go live great lives and go do something that's going to make me proud of you than just sitting around my house telling me how wonderful I am all the time. Because I get it. I want you to love me. I need your affirmation, but I need you to live your own life as well. There's I didn't have kids so that there were just people sit around and adore me. Wouldn't that sound weird if you say, I just want kids, I'm going to teach them to sit around and tell me how wonderful I am all the time? You're like, wow, that's kind of creepy. Because really, when you find out, when you have kids, it's really all about them, and it's like you're laying down your life for them most of the time. Even when they're adults, you have to put it in perspective. Christina's a few weeks away from delivery, and she had taken Sophia on vacation, and then she wanted to take Olivia before the baby comes. She wanted to have okay, I get that. That's fine. Didn't know they were going to New Orleans. I look on Facebook, and pregnant Christina and Olivia are in some river with some guy outside of New Orleans feeding marshmallows to alligators that are swimming all around the boat. And the father in me is thinking, I hope you have a plan that if you went into labor out there on the river, or if Olivia tumbled over into the water with no life jacket on, I hope, and we met this week and came here and saw Lion King together in the other theater. And I told her, I said, I just have to not worry about y'all. I have to figure y'all, because what am I going to do? You're a grown woman. You're out on the river. But just for a minute, when I was telling Ken about it, he thought I was just speaking hyperbole. There was I said, no. There were literally alligators all around. I'm not speaking metaphorically. There were giant lizards that my granddaughter was dropping marshmallows in their mouth. And I was just like, well, praise God. You have to believe God's got them. The angel of the Lord camps round about them. Because I can't, what am I going to do? She's a grown, married, pregnant, I'm supposed to say married. She's a grown, pregnant woman. So I'm like, all right, good. And in some crazy way, because even, my granddaughters will fly places. Like, Olivia wanted to see her other grandmother and flew out and spent Christmas with her. She's in second grade. My mom was asking me about it. My mom said, I wouldn't fly by myself now, much less, she's like, are you sure that's okay? I said, I'd be lying if I said it didn't concern me sometimes. Like, are you sure she knows what she's doing? I said, however, I'd so much rather them to learn to live fearlessly that I'm willing to push the envelope on that. And sure enough, Olivia comes getting off the plane. She's got a big stuffed sloth with her. How was your flight? It was great, but this woman next to me would not stop talking. I wanted to play on my iPad, but she talked to me the whole time. I said, well, she's going to be okay. If you're already griping like you're an adult, you're going to be fine. But I would rather my kids individualize. And, Jared and Jonah have spent the whole summer in Europe. They're traveling places. I keep up with them by looking on YouTube. Oh, that's where they played last night. Okay, whatever. I miss them. I'm ready for them to come home. But I'm glad. I would much rather them that than say, Dad, we had an opportunity to go to Europe. We just want to come to your house and thank you for being a dad. I'm like, no, I got it. Go live a life. I'm good. Or we don't have a job. Yes, absolutely. So, and I know that's it's kind of a strange analogy, but you get the point. Even, I've got a family member who's, just hanging in between two worlds, between life and death. And I understand that we're not, they're believing for a miracle, hoping against hope, and don't want anybody around because they don't want anybody speaking negative over him. But his son called me this week and said, can I just talk to you? Because, we're standing in faith for a miracle, but I don't know how long do you do that? And, he was telling me how bad shape he's in. And I said, he said, I'm not even supposed to call you and tell you this. I said, this is what's ridiculous. I know you don't want people in the house because you don't want people to speak negative. I said, I invented speaking positively. So if you think that we're going to come and, say negative, weird stuff, you clearly don't know who I am. But that being said, I said, he's talking about his dad. I said, what does your dad want? He said, well, when it's just him and me, he wants to go on. I said, well, then why don't you honor his wishes? Because he's miserable where he is. He is 89. I know you're wanting to make it, to 100. And if you're healthy, I saw somebody post something this week about a woman that ran a marathon at 103. So, there are centenarians that are doing amazing things and skydiving, whatever. If you can do that, fine. If, however, you're skeletal and weigh 130 pounds and people are having to, carry you to the bathroom and you don't want to be here anymore, you have to let somebody go. And I know that's difficult. Sometimes people will ask me, how long do you stand in faith, whatever. I said, well, I can answer this two ways. First of all, find out what they want. Secondly, as long as they're breathing, there's still hope. So, yeah, if you want to hope against hope, I know it's difficult to let somebody go. But at a certain point, you have to say, this is not about the seed anymore. This is not about, I believe God's going to do something. It's what's going on in their soil. What do they want? You got to really look at the questions Jesus would ask. But Jesus asked a blind man, what do you want? Most of us would look at it and go, duh, he wants to see. A few years ago, remember back, this has been some time ago, they found out there was some surgery that they could have done on Stevie Wonder that would have restored his sight, and he turned it down. Because he said, I don't know how to live my life that way. He said, I'd be afraid I'd lose my gift. I wouldn't even know how to, I wouldn't be me anymore. Now, those of us who see think, well, how could you not want to see? If you've never seen and you've done, Stevie Wonder did all right. That's his choice. It would what if somebody just said, hell no, Stevie Wonder, we're going to make you see. If that's not what he wanted, you go give him the surgery and he ends up dying from it, because that's not what he wanted. You have to learn how, the thing I posted yesterday, the meditation I posted, I said, life's a river. And you have to learn how to navigate the current and stop swimming upstream all the time. It doesn't mean that you're just passive all the time, but you also have to learn that life, it's moving and it's changing, and you're just wearing yourself out swimming upstream on, some things just are what they are. And you need to learn how to not give up, but learn how to successfully flow in that river and make it work for you. And a part of that is, trust what somebody wants. Now, I do believe there's a way you can speak to somebody that will spark their faith. For instance, if my mom's streaming, may laugh at this, may not. But anytime if she ever has said something about she's not sure she's going to make it or whatever, I'm like, let me tell you something. If the angel comes for you first, you have to send him back. Because I can figure out what to do without him. Him without you, I don't know. So y'all can go together. That's fine. But you can't go first. And every time I say that to her, she gets better. Like her tremor stop, whatever. So there is a way you can speak to someone. Like I remember even when Debbie and I were married and that Judah and Jonah were little, there was something she had to go to the doctor for it was kind of serious. And when we were leaving the doctor, she was reading the thing and she said, this says this could even be fatal. And I just felt fear come into the car. And meanwhile, Judah and Jonah are both in car seats in the back, and they are screaming at each other and slamming things over each other's head. And I said, let me tell you something. If you think you're going to die and leave me with this, you can think again, sister. You got to take up your bed and walk, because I ain't doing this without you. But she got well that night. So there is a way that you can speak to someone to say, I don't want you to give up. I want you to fight or whatever. And it's different for everybody. I don't have a formula. When somebody says, how should we pray in the situation, I have to know a little bit about what do you want? I've told you this a bazillion times. Roz, if you want to fill in the blanks on this, you can. Correct me if I get my details wrong. But the first funeral I ever did was an elderly woman who, elderly. I mean, I won't say what I called elderly at the time. It's not that far away from where I am now. I guess I need to rethink this story. But she was a business owner and walked out in front of her business one day and just collapsed on the sidewalk. And I mean, she was right at 80. And she was at the hospital, and I went to visit her in the hospital, and her family was in there planning her funeral. I mean, they were calling people, whatever, and they weren't that crazy about me anyway. Let me tell you, I don't go to visit everybody in the hospital because I'm not sure everybody's up to my visit. Sometimes I make people laugh too much, and the nurse comes in and says, can y'all bring it down a little bit? But I said, can I go back and see her? And they said, well, you can, but she's comatose. Like, she hasn't spoken to anybody. She hasn't spoken to anybody. I said, well, can I just go see her? Because I had a relationship with her. And they said, well, yeah, okay. So I walked back there, and she's like in ICU, and she's got something in her nose, something in her mouth. She is hooked up. And her name was Minnie. I said, Minnie, can you hear me? And she opened her eyes. I said, I just have a minute. I just need to know, do you want to live or are you ready to go? I said, do you want to live? And she was like, I said, all right, then I'm going to believe you're going to live. So I walked out and told them, I said, well, she responded to me, which clearly I thought they were going to slap me when I said that. But she got well and lived, I think, another 9 years, I believe. And was the first funeral I ever did. That was so it was I was very connected to her. But I just remember that because if she was ready to go, look, I've hurt bad enough at times that I remember thinking, God, if people who live with chronic pain that doesn't get any better, I can see why they would just want to go on. Because if this is what if I didn't think, like, when I had really, really bad vertigo, that was worse than any pain I've ever had. And as I'm laying, I shouldn't even energize this. I was laying on the bathroom floor at 3 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't get up. Every time I got up, I would fall into the toilet and hit my head. And I'm laying there and I'm looking. My battery's about gone. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Should I call 911? Because I can't. If they come, I can't even get up to let them in. And I finally. So I had Metron. I had to call Judah. And I said, Judah, Dad, real sick. You preach. And he came and preached that day. And I got, but I remember laying there thinking, good God, if this doesn't get better, I can't live like this. There's no, I mean, this is unlivable. So I also know there are people who just, they need to go to the other side. But you have to, I didn't mean to talk so much about passing, and I'm trying to be sensitive because I know some of you have just lost, you've had people cross over. My point is it's much more about you than it is even about God. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you're just saying, God can do anything, God's got it all, well, yeah, the world's going to still turn. God's got that. It's still going to revolve around the sun, and we're still going to have seasons. You may not be here until you get you've got to tap into that. I'm not diminishing the power of God. It's like, when I taught you about Job, at the end of Job, God comes to Job out of the whirlwind and says, it's neither me nor the devil. He said, you deck yourself with majesty. I mean, Job turns out to be the ultimate humanist manifesto, because it begins with God and the devil, these two powers outside of Job, sort of just playing with his life. And it ends with God saying, it's neither of us doing this, it's you. It's you. I'm going to tell you something. This is not a popular message for religious-minded people. If you don't want to take responsibility for your life, it's so much easier to wait for God or blame the devil. It just is. I posted whatever night it was, Friday night, about, I said, you just have to stop listening to your inner fear voice. So you don't have to rebuke anything. You don't have to cast out anything. You don't have to be delivered of anything. You said, stop listening to fear. And just listen to the voice of love inside of you. Perfect love casts out fear. It's not complicated. People live because they want to live. They prosper because they want to prosper. They get well because they want to get well. I mean, I'm not oversimplifying it. I'm saying you don't know what's going on inside someone. You don't know. And that's why even when I love Mario. Orsini. Mario is like a father figure to me. But the last time I saw him, a few days before he finally did cross over, I asked Betty, who was here last week, I said, what are we praying for? She said, well, we've got all of South America and Latin America. I mean, they were hoping against hope. I said, all right, fine. I don't want to, downplay that in any way. But to him, I said, Mario, I'm just going to say this to you. I said, if you want to fight, and he's virtually comatose, I said, if you want to fight, then I'm in your corner. If anybody could fight the fight of faith, it's you. If anybody could live to 120, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking if anybody could live to be 120, it'd be him. But I said, if, however, you are tired of fighting and you want to go rest, then you can do that as well. And Betty was in agreement with that. And, he went not long after that. That's why even when you grieve someone, you have to really think about what your grieving is. Missing them is one thing. Allowing them the freedom to be on the other side. Because I'm going to tell you something you may not want to hear. But your loved ones that have crossed over are not grieving for you. They're not even unhappy. I know that gets really real when you think, well, that sucks. I'm over here. My world has been shattered, understandably. I'm just saying they're not even missing the earth. I'm not even sure they would want to come back. I mean, once you've crossed over, it's beautiful on the other side. I didn't plan on this going this direction today, but there must be a reason I'm saying it. But even when Rutherford was telling me about when his mom passed, he was with her. And now understand, she was walking in some understanding that had been given her through traditional Christianity. But I mean, this was moments before she passed. She said, well, I don't know. I don't have anything to wear. I don't have anything to wear when I go to the other side, when I go to heaven. And he said, well, Mom, I've always heard that you get a robe and a crown when you go to the other side, because that's the terminology she would understand. So she literally started going through the motions of buttoning something up. And he said her last words was, she went, oh, it's more beautiful than I thought. And that was it. Now, was that literal streets of gold? I don't know. To me, thinking that streets of gold nearly limits it. Paul said, I saw it, but I couldn't talk about it. And I didn't even talk about not talking about it till 25 years later. He said, eye has not seen, ear has not heard. And I also told you, since I'm on these stories, when my Uncle Harry, Bishop Michigan, when he passed, he was there in the room, and he was in two worlds. He said, oh, y'all have no idea. He said, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. And they didn't know if he was just, are you out of your head or whatever? And he said, I can see everything. And he said, looking to the other side, he's like looking through cellophane. He said, I can see everything on the other side. And he said, they're coming to get the garbage right now. And again, they thought that's the drugs talking. My cousin Haroline walks over in the hospital room, looks out the window down, and the garbage truck is out there picking up the garbage. He was already seeing everything from up here. And then he passed. So do I believe in eternal life? Absolutely. It's real. Do I want to live here? As long as I possibly can. I'm not sure they're two different places. I'm not sure when Paul said we're seated with him in heavenly places, he actually meant it. Now, them's fighting words in some circles, because people think heaven's out there. No, I really think it's here. You just don't know it's here. And when you leave the body, you see, like, oh my God, I've been here all along. Oh, Auntie M, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Because it's such a, I came here the other day and watched it. They were showing the 80th anniversary of Wizard of Oz. I came here and watched it with my granddaughters. And as many zillions of times as I've seen it, I thought, man, this metaphor, it's so multi-layered that she thinks it's something outside her, but it's been here all along. She just didn't see it. And see, that's my issue. Most Christians are wanting to somewhere over the rainbow and don't realize there's no place like home. And could it be, to say that there's going to be a generation of people who no longer die, that just sounds too out there. I do think there's the Creator has been looking for some generation of people that will realize those worlds aren't divided. And by the same token, some people are right here and they're living in hell. They don't need to go to some place with fire and brimstone. They're living in hell now. I've been in and out of it before. You know what I mean? David said, you will not leave my soul in, it was translated hell in King James, but he said, you will not leave my soul in Sheol. So we go in and out, earth, heaven, all of that. It's all a matter of perception. All right, how do I connect these dots to meditation? Well, let me show you this. This Joseph Murphy says, all of us have our own inner fears, beliefs, opinions. These inner assumptions rule and govern our lives. A suggestion has no power in and of itself. Its power arises from the fact that you accept it mentally. Now, let me tell you something. This is really important. Jesus says, Satan has come to me, but he has nothing in me. When you get to the place that you're taking things personally less and less, when it becomes easier for you to take the high road, when letting a soft answer turn away wrath becomes second nature to you, when you're not defensive, even about what you believe. Like, this is why, if anybody, and it hardly even happens now, but if anybody wants to challenge me to a religious argument, it's not that I can't win the argument. It's not that I'm afraid of the argument. It's I'm just not interested in the argument. Because my argument is not going to create revelation. I have argued before and in theory won my argument, but still did not win the heart of the person. If anything, they were embarrassed that I had just annihilated them intellectually. But it didn't change their paradigm. If, however, I can say something that relieves you of your spiritual amnesia, and you realize, oh, I can let that abide in me, which I heard from the beginning. I've been here all along. Maybe it is like cellophane. Maybe those worlds we're realizing they're not nearly as divided as we thought, which is why this time business is important. Because basically the definition of eternity is timelessness. Can you live outside of time? I keep finding myself sort of doing it. It doesn't happen every day, but it's happening enough that it gets my attention. Well, that's interesting. Yesterday, Frances had posted about something she ordered online that got to her house. And this isn't drones, or this is like something that is logistically impossible. It got there yesterday. When I read that, I was in Greensboro yesterday, and I thought, that's interesting, because I ordered some things I'd like to get early too. I got home. I'd already got an email that says they will be here Thursday or Friday of next week. I thought, what the hey? I'm going to go down and ask the concierge. It was two things. One of them's not here, but one of them was. And it was marked on there the 26th, which was the day before. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. The email said the 27th. It's marked on the 26th. It's like it got here yesterday. It's like it got here before they sent it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, now we're talking. That's what I'm talking about. Absolutely.
Is that what Jesus was trying to get across to us when he said, believe you receive when you pray?
Yes.
Is that what Jesus meant when he said this sickness with Lazarus is not unto death, and then waits 4 days to get there to say, I can back... there's a way on your computer, you can, what do they call it? You can go back to... There's a program. Charles, what's that called when you go back and... Even if your history is deleted, there's a word for it. It's like time travel or something. Is it recovery or something? There's some word for it that you can go back. You have to be really sophisticated in how to do it. But you can even find documents that you've lost because they're somewhere, I guess, to restore. The Spirit is taking me all kind of places I didn't plan on going today. But wasn't that Joel's prophecy? He says, I will restore to you the years the cankerworm has eaten away. He didn't say the things. He said, I'll restore to you the years. Stop saying, I gave that man the best years of my life. No, you didn't. Well, exactly. And if you... I bet you wish you had all this now, huh? How you like me now? No, but I'm serious. There are people who are mourning the passage of time, and they're cursing themselves into, time is working against them. I've opened up so many windows now. What's that? Yes, there is. I think this is just a meme I wanted to show you. This guy has written about the subconscious, and there's another thing I'm going to show you in a minute that's nearly the same thing. But he says your subconscious mind controls all the vital processes of your body and knows the answer to all the problems. So think about this. If we're talking about timelessness, let's just say, what if you were on a timeline and then this thing happened and you got sick at this point? Like, I wasn't sick until last August. What if you can live outside of time and you back it up to before August when you got the disease? What if that's the way to live disease-free? Instead of saying, once the doctor diagnosed this, then I was sick. I'm telling you, that's one thing Dispenza talks a lot about, is the power of the placebo. And he's going in some areas that I'm like, man, I hope he's got all of his insurance and everything. Because there are people who are saying they no longer have cancer and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, look, I guess they got no reason to make this up. Because his whole thing is, if you can give somebody a placebo and they, like for instance, there was a guy who was falsely diagnosed with cancer. And immediately his body started having the symptoms that went along with it, even though he did not have the cancer. Then when they found out that he had been misdiagnosed, the symptoms stopped. I'm not saying everything is psychosomatic, but a lot is. A lot of physical sickness is connected. Louise Hay's written a lot about this. A lot of physical sickness is connected to a memory, a thing, an event, whatever. There's all kind of things involved with it. Sometimes there's shame involved in a sickness. People are beating themselves up. I can't believe I let myself get sick like this, whatever. What if there is something to your youth being renewed like the eagles? What if that is a real thing? What if that was not just prophets speaking poetically? You know what's really have you ever studied about how an eagle renews its youth? It's crazy. Because that's used 2 or 3 times in the scripture, the analogy of he will renew your youth like the eagles. And eagles, they're not even sure. Eagles are so removed. They don't even have a lot of information about them because it's hard to study them in captivity. But you know how, like, if a fingernail grows long, it begins to curve? Well, that's why beaks on birds curve. And the longer the beak grows, it curves under to a certain point. A bird reaches an age where it can't open its beak anymore because the top part of it is curved over so much. And that definitely happens with eagles. So an eagle, when it's time for them to have their youth renewed, they actually will go. There's no, I don't know if there's any footage of this available, but somehow they know this is what happens. An eagle will actually go and begin to beat its head on a rock until it breaks its beak off so it can grow a new one. Now, when that happens, it can't eat. So it virtually dies. They say if you ever see an eagle that's in that mode, it's more than just molting. It's like they actually die. They nearly lose so much weight because they can't eat or whatever. And so when their youth is renewed, little by little the beak begins to grow back and they can begin to eat. Because it's not just chewing, it's the way they have to peck at things or whatever. Like that's how they don't have teeth. That's what they use that. They're not even sure. I mean, eagles may actually be much older than we even realize because it's hard to track them, and they just keep reincarnating themselves. But isn't it interesting that it happens with their mouth? Change their mouth. Change what you're saying. What if you're aging yourself with your own words? What if you're aging yourself with what you're eating? Everything's connected to the mouth. They even say people that floss regularly live about 5 years longer than people who don't, because most diseases are connected to the mouth. That's crazy. But I said this a few months ago, and several of you have responded to it. I made it a point. You know, you just get in this habit. You're sitting in your easy chair, and I bought this leather recliner a few months ago. That's like every time I sit in it, I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever purchased. And it's a smart chair, so I can charge my phone on the side of it, and you know, you can adjust your head, you can adjust your feet. And it's just like, sometimes when I'm in it, I'm like, I am so in my happy space. I could never leave this chair. Like if I've got a big screen TV and the air conditioning's just right, and I got my snack situation the way I like it, like, yeah, I could sit here like a long time. And sometimes I do. Sometimes when my watch is like, you need to get up and walk around, I'm like, all right, just let me look at this one more thing on YouTube. You ever get pulled into the YouTube vortex when you're like, I was watching this one thing, but now it's showing me these other things. And like, if you're interested in this, you might be interested in this. Anyway, what was my point? Oh, but when you're, what was that commercial that guy was talking about? Deep couch sitting. Like there's a way that you sit, you put your, so I was noticing I was getting in the habit of when I stood up from it, I go, like that. And I thought, I've got something. I'm making an old man sound. Like, stop. Sometimes Ken he'll do something with his back. He'll go, oh, me. And I go, stop saying that. You sound like, I tell him who he sounds like. That's like old man talk. We're young and cute. And I'm not saying being in denial, but there's just a way when you're around people and all they're talking about is their sickness and their, and they're topping each other's story with, ugh. I think I've got another meme to show you. Or is it? No, it's a Earl Nightingale quote. It says, whatever we plant in our subconscious mind and nourish with repetition and emotion will one day become a reality. That's what I was talking to you last week about the subconscious being female and the conscious being male, and that the conscious impregnates the subconscious and the subconscious gives birth. The subconscious is really controlling things. Then I have another one to show you. It's a Napoleon Hill quote. The subconscious mind is more susceptible to influence by impulses of thought mixed with feeling or emotion than by those originating solely in the reasoning portion of the mind. That's why when Dr. Dispenza leads these meditations, he will say, because he did that when I went to his workshop, he says, visualize what you want and then think about how you would feel when that happened. Because he said it's the capturing of the feeling that makes it real. And I thought, well, that's Mark 11:24. That's believing you receive when you pray. That's still an abstract concept to be excited before the fact. I mean, most of the praise reports I've heard in my life were from people who got manifestation. Let me tell you what happened. I've never gotten anybody that says, let me tell you what I prayed about. Because they don't really believe. I didn't pray about it. It didn't happen. But Jesus said, when you get to that place where it all begins to, it's like an eclipse, when past, present, and future all come together. Spirit, soul, and body all come together. Conscious and subconscious all come together. You can see clearly everything lines up. And you speak, it's like, it's as if I received it. And see, this is why, if you think heaven's out there somewhere, this is why you're so bound to time. Because one of these days, I'm going to make it. It's kind of what you were asking me the other day, Larry, but, aren't we already there? Aren't they already here? Whatever. Like, yes. I don't know how to totally articulate that, but yes. It's already happened. And that's the, when we get a hold of that, we'll stop being so bound by time and space. Because if I have this idea that I need this to happen, but it won't happen until this timeline, then you're still subject to the timeline. This is real important for people who keep waiting to make it. Why haven't I made it? Why haven't I made it? It's the very fact that you think you haven't made it that's keeping you from making it. Because you still think it's out there somewhere. I remember the first time Ken came to church. It was on Easter Sunday. It was the last Sunday that we were in the smaller building there on Irish Drive. And I was trying to explain to him, I said, this is a much smaller crowd than I used to have. And he said, no, you don't understand. I grew up in a church that had 30 members. So this is like the biggest church I've ever seen. I thought, well, that's really interesting because it's all a matter of perspective. I remember when I was having my little 15 minutes of fame, people started texting me. They said, turn on Good Morning America. George Stephanopoulos is talking about you. So I turned it on, and just to hear his story, he said, I see this picture of me, and he goes, he pastored one of the largest churches in America. And I'm looking at the picture going, he did? Like, I was so impressed. I was like, I had no idea. I mean, I knew it was a big church, but I was like, one of the largest in America? And then when I went to Korea, I'm speaking to the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, 75,000 people there, all out there, and a lot of Buddhist monks, whatever. And they introduced me through the interpreter, the pastor of one of the largest churches in America. And I'm like, really? I had no idea. I'm like, you better recognize. But it's like this idea of, wow, if I think I'm not somebody because I'm counting butts and seats today, I'm missing the big picture because that's still making me subjective to time. Do you understand? Like this whole thing with the multiverse, this whole idea, I've joked about this for years, but people think I have so much money that I think, well, maybe in some dimension, I guess I do. Like when we were in the property next to us there on Irish Drive was owned by the guy that owned the Horseshoe in Las Vegas. We went out there to meet with him because at that time we were, growing a lot and were thinking about buying the property. He said, well, what do you want? What kind of deal do you want? Because they were asking for $8 million for it, which is super overpriced. I said, well, what I want you to do is give it to me and let me give you a tax write-off. That's what I want. But then we can work back from that. And he said, how could a man with as much money as you even think of something like that? He said, you could write a check for this and not even miss it. And I thought, how do you think that I could write you a check for $8 million? Why do you think that? And then I remember Rutherford telling me one time, he called me, this is when we were building the building. I've told you all these things, haven't I, Russ? He said he had to go to court with somebody in West Georgia, and he said the people in front of him were talking about Church of the Now. And they said, have you seen that thing they're building out there on I-20? Yeah, I've seen it. It looks like they're building the Omni. And the guy said, well, one thing you can guarantee, every penny of it's paid for before they even started with as many ball players as he's got in his church. As that man's a millionaire. And I said, how do people think? And it was the day he told me that, it couldn't have been more absurd. We're just trying to pay for the parking lot. And I think, why do people think that? And I finally decided, I guess in one of the dimensions, I must be a roller and a baller and a player and all that rolled into one, I guess, because people just perceive I am loaded. So it makes you think, well, I guess in some reality, and I'm not poor man because I am blessed. I have everything I want. I'm just saying it's the way people perceive that you have so much more than you actually have. It makes you think, well, maybe that is true in some dimension. Maybe if you learn to live outside of time, maybe you are young. Maybe you are successful. Maybe you have made it. Maybe all those things that you thought were elusive aren't over the rainbow. There is no place like home. They're already here, and you just have to realize it. Is the manifestation just waiting for the realization? All right. This is Psalm 51:6, and I used this when I first started this. I want to close with it. This is the International Standard Version. David says, indeed, you are pleased with truth in the inner person, and you will teach me wisdom in my innermost parts. That's your subconscious. And then I'll end with this. This is very similar to the other quote I gave you, but she takes it a little further, this Dr. Jill Carnahan. Your subconscious mind controls all the vital processes of your body. It already knows the answers to your problems, and it already knows how to heal you. Here's a thought. Do you have to wait to get to heaven to have a glorified body? What if it's trying to be glorified now? All right. Let's bring, did you get anything out of this month? Let's bring the lights down. I'm going to start with this. Michelle found this video, and I want you to prepare for meditation. Go ahead and kind of get in meditation mode. Go ahead and start this, Michelle. And I want you to just begin to relax and get prepared for next weekend. And you can put the sound on it. This is Driftwood Beach. And this is about 8 minutes long, so I might not show the whole thing, but in a few minutes when I give you the sign, we'll kind of phase this out and bring up the music. But I wanted you to start getting prepared for what we're going to do next week. See what an unusual... I've never seen a beach quite like this. But anyway, this is where we'll be today. Seems like that beach is made for meditation. You can go ahead and begin your breathing. Breathe in through your nose. Hold it. Exhale through your mouth. Inhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Just begin to feel yourself relax. Come into a contemplative state. We could do the music simultaneously with it, so it's fine. Just keep the music on. I like the sound of the waves too, so keep that on as well, if you can. You can close your eyes if you want to. If you want to look at the waves, you can do that. I'm not going to instruct you a lot on meditation today. Just do what feels organic to you. Genesis. It says the Spirit is vibrating over the face of the deep. If you are looking at the screen while I've got you here, I show you. You'll have to park on the street and kind of, there's a little pathway through that wooded area. So I just wanted you to be prepared for that with whatever you wear on your feet or whatever. Consistent in your breathing. Let your subconscious heal itself. this series, with all the words that have been spoken this month, we embrace the Hebrew word Selah, the word that David used after words were sung. The Selah meant to pause and calmly think of that. We contemplate what we've learned this month. We hold it in our hearts. Those that are going to the beach next week, take it with them. Those who are unable to go this time will have the same experience. That we feel the connection. Whether you are going there or staying in town or going somewhere else, I speak peace to you, healing to your subconscious, healing to your conscious as well, and a bringing together of the two. The male and female parts of you will create together something beautiful, a better version of yourself. The eagle in you is renewing its youth. I speak vitality to you, youth, vigor, strength. More importantly, the ability to live beyond time. The work of the Holy Spirit is to restore the years that have been eaten away. Not only is time on your side, time is not even an issue. Believe you receive when you pray. Your subconscious already lives outside of time. I call you into oneness. I call you into wholeness. I call you into spirit. I call you into God. Let's breathe our way out of the meditation one more time. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. All right, you can begin to come out of it. It was beautiful. Michelle, you rocked on that video. Thank you. That really set the tone for it. Let's stand. I got this week I got an Apple Watch, and it has a little app on it to take you through a meditation. Anytime you look at it, it's like you just hit this button, it'll tell you to breathe, and it vibrates. It tells you you breathe in and out with. It's really interesting. And even in the checkout line, yeah. And in the I didn't buy the magazine, but I was noticing, is it Life has it's on the counters now about mindfulness, how that people are getting more and more into meditation. I thumbed through it, and there was like people stretching on the beach and doing all that kind of stuff. I thought we're so in the flow. We're so ahead of the curve. Did you get anything out of this month? Frankincense. Play this for the YouTube audience, please.
Contributing to Metron is quick and easy. You can give any time using any smartphone. Text the amount you would like to donate to 404-620-5044. You will then receive a notification that you successfully completed your donation. You may also visit bishinthenow.com and click the support tab to give there as well. When you contribute to Metron, you're also donating to the charity or organization of the month. Thank you for your investment into Metron.
If you're making a check, make it to JESM, and Danny will receive it. And if you have cash, please pay it forward and go bless somebody. This is good, isn't it? Y'all don't want to go, do you? You want to stay? All right. Well, I hope I see you all on the beach. It's not too late. If you say, "Oh, we missed our win," no, you could just do it. Just do it. Figure it out. Everybody's figuring it out. I was gonna do that thing where I was gonna write the article, but they wanted me to sign contracts, and Howie didn't want to do that. And I said, "It's fine. I'll just stay where I was gonna stay anyway. It's like it's fine. Something even better will happen. I should let y'all go." What'd you say? Yes. All right. Bye.